Hello, and welcome to our new webinar, this time with Omar Luethi and Kaja Prystupa-Rządca from Switzerland and from Poland. And we will talk more about how to untap digital potential for business education. While the participants are gathering, let me just give you, as usual, very brief background on who we are, what we are, and why we are running these webinars. My name is Olga Wilegurska. I'm director of CEEMAN, the Management Development Association for Dynamic Societies. This is where we are located, actually, on beautiful Lake Bled, at the heart of Slovenia, at the heart of Europe, headquartered at IEGC, Bled School of Management. And over 25 years, more than 25 years of our existence, we have managed to gather more than 200 members from 50 countries around the world with the main mission of helping to advance management development in dynamic societies. And we do that through a number of activities, all of particular relevance for developing skills, for developing the right attitudes, values, both in management teachers, program managers, deans, faculty and staff. We run also joint research and publications, different competitions, but all with this focus on relevance and excellence in management education. So for example, IMTA, our International Management Teachers Academy, where we have educated more than 650 professors of management from more than 50 countries around the world, is also where we met Omar and Kaja back in 2012. And we particularly like seeing how the relationships that were built at IMTA, built in Bled, continue to flourish, continue to develop. And there are a number of collaboration projects coming from our alumni. And one of them is also collaboration between Omar and Kaja. And they will tell you a little bit more about it later on. So just to announce that all recordings from our free webinars are available on our website, on our social media channels. You're welcome to check more of them. Also, a quick announcement not to miss our next panel on next week on 4th of June, where we will talk to CEOs and see what they expect from their business graduate from collaboration with business schools. But now let me welcome all of you here. We have more than 150 participants registered for this webinar, representing 38 countries around the world, and literally around the world. There are bigger groups coming from some countries in Africa, in Europe, in the US. So warm welcome to everyone. I hope you will enjoy the webinar. We will be recording it, as I mentioned, and you have a chance to post your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen for the panelists, or also to put any comments that you would like to share with others, and we will try our best to answer all of your questions. Let me invite now Omar and Kaja to take the stage. Omar, Kaja, please join us. Wonderful to have you with us. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your great energy, your great knowledge. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Olga. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. We would actually like to start with a poll. Lado, would you mind starting the poll, please? Yes, so we would like to ask you for your participation. Please give us your answers. The first one, we would like to see how you describe yourself in terms of competency level in teaching online, teaching over distance. Perfect. We get some results in. Here are the results. A lot of beginner and intermediate levels. Wonderful. And I also appreciate that we have some advanced levels and experts in the room that will allow us to even have a more interesting Q&A session then afterwards as well. A really diverse group. Thank you. So next question. What do you regard as your biggest challenge when teaching over distance, when teaching online? We'll just wait a couple of seconds and see how this develops. Keeping student attention high is the #1. Yes, it is. Perfect. Kaja, I think that's wonderful, because like we kind of expected this to happen, or hoped that this would happen, but we also quickly look at
the second one, the finding suitable learning methods. Yes, this will be as well today tackled about.
And obviously motivating your students to participate and finding suitable learning methods. It's all interconnected anyway, and we want to talk exactly about this today. So we're going to close the poll here, and let's start with the presentation. But I think expectations and difficulties in the room here are exactly what we're going to talk about. So let me close this. And I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, so untapping the digital potential for business education. This is our topic, and we want to talk about how we can create more activity in the classroom and engage our students through the means of the digital potential. So when you start to teach online, and we have a lot of beginners and intermediate level in the room, when you start to teach online, you think about it's actually pretty hard to step out of your teaching routines, the teaching routines that may work perfectly fine in your existing setting, on-site setting, but stepping out of your comfort zone is pretty hard. So here is a trick. I would suggest that you start asking yourself, what's the absolute worst online class you could possibly do? And if you think about this, if you go from that side of the spectrum, you will come up with 5, 6, 7 different aspects that would have to be in if you wanted to go for the absolute worst online class. And once you have identified these aspects, why don't you just go for exactly the opposite? Chances are that you will be quite innovative and that it will have a positive effect on your teaching as well. Maybe the biggest misconception when we look at online teaching, and it probably comes with the words online teaching or digital classrooms as well, is that a lot of times we put too much weight, too much energy on technology itself. Look, it's not the surfboards that make for a great surfing experience. Somehow we can actually take any surfboard and we can paddle out, but we have to read the environment. We need to read the waves and catch the right wave, stand up in the right moment, and do all these different little activities that add up to a great surfing experience. But it is definitely not the technology alone that will make a great day out. And I think we should keep that in mind when we start designing online courses. Put your students in the center, not technology. things that can happen when you put technology in the center. I call this tech mud. Tech mud is that feeling when too many applications are in, too much time to switch from one application to one collaboration tool to another, then the next, and then it just gets muddy. There is another type of mud as well that we should be trying to avoid, and that's organizational mud. If we don't have that clear structure, if we try to improvise in an online setting, that's quite difficult as well. But there is also swamp per se, or mud per se, is not bad. It's just we need to try to avoid that tech mud and the organizational mud. But instead, go for what I would call good mud or positive mud. That's mud that adds to the learning experience, mud that students need to overcome in order to recognize or to order to build their knowledge or develop their skills. Online learning settings are especially natural playgrounds for 21st century skills like communication, collaboration, digital literacy. Kaja, maybe you want to say something about the benefits.
Look, it's like when we look right now, of course, it can be evident that we needed to start working virtually. But even though just before COVID-19, we had all the trends and all the prognosis that we are going to work more and more virtually. The last report just before the whole pandemic was that by 2035, around 20% of humans in the world will work online. So it means that it's not only something that has happened, but this is an ongoing trend, and we need to be prepared in order to work effectively. It is about the communication. It is about right project management. It's as well about the ability to diagnose crisis, because online this crisis is not so visible. So we need to have a space to train that. And lastly, as well, the ability to do brainstorming online. Usually for the brainstorming, we need to meet. Right now we couldn't. And I think that there might be the cases in time that either we cannot, or it's too much time for us to relocate. So this is the best chance for us to learn it and practice, and not only for one class, but for the whole learning experience.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kaja. Yeah, it's not only challenges that we have to overcome, but we may also look at the opportunities that we can access through online classrooms, and that we should promote as well. So Kaja and myself, we have prepared an easy to use 7-step process how to build your online classroom, or how to transform your online class into a very interactive and experiential learning event. And we want to start with step number 1, and this is course structure. One important difference between on-site sessions and online sessions is that the distance, it works against the orientation. Like, it means that if you are teaching over distance, it's very hard for students to keep the orientation in your structure, in your course structure. So if you teach in a subject or module where you may have four different course blocks, and all these symbols here represent one block each. So that could be a half-day course, one, then another half-day here, 2 weeks later you have another one and another one. If that setting looks anything like that, it's hard for your participants to know how they should interact with you. So you rather want to go from the beginning for an easy to follow routine. Make it easy to follow, make it easy for your students to understand how your structure, how your classes work. Kaja, can you add something to that?
Like from my experience is this how students perceive that. Imagine that they have not only your course, but they have multiple courses. So if they need to all the time switch in between the technologies, between different tools, it just makes for them difficult as well. If you introduce always something new, it may appear okay that we look trendy, yes, but from the perspective of the student, they need to catch up. They need to focus not on the core, on the knowledge that you want to transmit or teach the skills, but they need to focus how to understand, how to get the access to this knowledge. So this is additional inefficiency of the whole process.
Excellent, thank you, Kaja. So step number one, or rule number one, build an easy to follow routine over the entire course so that every single unit kind of resembles each other. There is still enough freedom within each block. We get to talk about this just in a minute. So step number two is student activity. Have you ever asked yourself to what degree you actually split up the activity between yourself as a teacher and your students? Now, the share that we see here in this course structure might work perfectly fine for an on-site course where you go in the first two blocks. It's probably more lecture type of course. Then you might bring in a small case in the third block. And then in the last one, you give the activity to your students. The thing is, attention levels, and we just saw that in the poll right at the beginning as well, attention levels tend to drop dramatically when you teach online in comparison to on-site formats. Attention levels, but also attention time span. So in order to avoid losing our students, we need to move towards student activity. So a good rule of thumb is to delegate about 3/4 of the time of your online sessions or your live sessions to your students. Put your students in the driver's seat. Put your students in the driver's seat, yes. So a lot of times we teach at novice levels, beginner levels, and the question here often comes, why should we give students a voice even if they cannot yet contribute to the theory? Kaja, maybe you want to add something there.
The thing is, like, what we should ask ourselves is whether we want to teach our students only the theory, or we want to show them that the theory is only some kind of a pattern that we want to look like through the lenses and on the reality, because we want to prepare them to life, yes, to real business cases. So the thing is that it's for us, as our role is to show the theory and there to train there and gain the experience with the theory. And the other element is that our reality right now is really complex. So what we experience is some kind of democratization of who has the knowledge. Because of course we have the knowledge about the theories, but they have knowledge about the different aspects of lives, different industries. So even if they are very, very young, they can provide us a lot of knowledge. And even, you know, what I always say during my classes, each class I learn a lot, because I'm not able to read the whole internet. I'm not able to participate in everything. It's only, you know, it's only this element that we can try to create a grant so they can share and they can see how the theory is applicable, you know, with the practice.
I have exactly the same experience as well. Yes, it's always good, even if it's just a bad comment. It kind of enriches the entire discussion. So step 2, step aside and put your students in the driver's seat. Now, if you do that, if you put your students in a driver's seat, what it means is that you start to move from a culture of consumption in your class to a culture of co-creation. Now, if you have a room full of co-creators in your class, you need to be very, very transparent and specific about what your expectations are. How should they behave? How do you collaborate with each other? How do you communicate with each other? So bring in, and this is our step number 3, from the beginning, bring in a code of conduct. This is really like, this is like your value statement for your online classroom, a value statement just like companies or organizations would have as well. Kaja, you have been studying virtual collaboration settings for quite some time. And so I wonder, what's your number 1 advice, or not advice, but your number 1 rule that you share in your code of conduct when it comes to online classrooms?
What I mostly focus is, I focus on communication. So I'm very, very precise on how we should communicate, in the meaning like, how, if you want to say something, whether you can just interrupt, you write on chat, or you raise your hand, yes, because now Zoom and Teams, they have this ability as well. We very precisely, I say how we launch the teams, how we work in teams, and my like golden rule is that when I say this is the timing and I write down the timing on chat, this is exactly the timing we go back. And this is the key, because without that, you cannot, in many tools, you cannot just push the students to come back. Yeah. So this as well builds trust. Yes, which is very important for online collaboration.
Thank you. Excellent, Kaja. So communication and trust and being on time. What I always add, or what I use a lot, I'm also very specific about what kind of energy level I demand in my classrooms. I really compare it with a sports ground. As a teacher, I see myself more of a facilitator. I can cut the lawn. I can see that we have the tools to practice with. But if they decide to go 120% and put like all their energy in it, something good tends to come out. If they want to lean back, the training or online classroom probably will just be an average experience then, or even below average. Yeah. So if step number 3 was being clear on how we want them to interact with us, we can really come to the core of not only of today's topic, but the core of planning an online session, and that is bringing in demanding challenges where your students can experience the topic, collaborate and find solutions together and conclusions. Somehow we need, in order to do that, and we're just talking about all these different challenges that we can bring in, or learning methods, but in general, we can say that the learning object, which is represented as a black box here, we usually need to split it up into different aspects or pieces of the puzzle. And then we can give it in make it chewable chunks for the students, and then give it in to the learning method where they can take over, where they can lead the activity, and then we somehow need to put the entire puzzle back together and close the learning loop. But let's talk about the different methods in here now. Such challenges or experiential learning methods, they can come in many different ways. Obviously, if I would teach a class in agile project management, for example, the most authentic challenge would probably be to run an agile project and then reflect on it. If I run a class in negotiations, I want to see my students negotiate. And so I think it would be wrong to search for the best method, the method is always only as good as it is authentic to the topic, authentic to the subject. But Kaja, we have 4 or 5 methods here: research sprint, case method, real world dilemmas, or design competitions. What's your preferred method, and how do you work with it, and why?
Like my preferred method is case study method, and I usually work with experts. I already wrote around 20 different case studies, and I still in touch with many of the companies who made it for me possible to write about them. So I always try to invite them for my classes. Right now it became extremely easy. Just to give you the example, like from mid-March till last week, I had 8 guests. So it's really, in a really short period of time, and you don't need to, right now we don't need to relocate. We are everyone in front of computers, so they can join just, for 20-15 minutes, they can give the task, and then later on they can show up for the results. So it's really, this added this, this great possibilities for us to work right now.
But we might even have to say, like, this is in after IMTA in 2012, this is actually how we started collaborating with each other, right? Because we wrote a case together, and then we started to invite one another via Skype or Google Hangout or whatever it was. And even in an on-site setting, we realized that has a very positive effect on the dynamics in the classroom. Also, when you attend as a guest, when you attend as part of a jury, listen to the presentations and so on, it adds to the positive pressure or positive tension.
It's the thing that each of us, we have different dynamics, we have different perspectives. So for students, it's really a great contribution. So they see not only from our sides like one truth, but they see variety and possibilities that are behind.
I myself like to work a lot with what I call research sprints as well. I tend to break up a topic into 4 or 5 different smaller, as I said, chewable chunks. And then I prepare 4 or 5 key questions to each of these perspectives or topics or parts of the learning object. And these 4 or 5 questions, that's what I give to smaller student teams then, and I let them work and work with these questions for maybe like 1.5 to 2 hours. So it's a perfect format in a half day format, and then I let them present the results. And as all the different groups had different chunks to prepare, every single presentation will be different, and this is a perfect ground to then work with these building blocks and rebuild the learning objective and put it together with them. So really collaborate with them. Let's quickly continue here. I have, or Kaja and myself, we have prepared 3 or 4 one-pagers about the research sprint, also about the case method, real-world dilemmas, and also about this one here. Wait, I quickly need to put that away. Somehow I don't see my screen here anymore. Okay, here. We don't want to go through all these different methods right now, but I can assure you, you will get access to it in our post webinar email. You will find a link where you can download our presentation, so you will have access to it and go through it later on. maybe one example that we can share here is about this design competition or mini hackathon, as Kaja and myself call it. In 2019, we had this, what we called virtual collaboration challenge. And the idea was this: if you look at your school, how is leadership in virtual teams taught, or how is project management taught in your institution, or intercultural diversity? Very, very often, this is unfortunately to this day still taught in lectures or maybe a case study, but it's definitely not untapping the full potential that digitalization would offer. So we wanted to experiment with it, and we approached several schools. We gathered 40 students from 6 schools out of 5 countries in 3 different continents, and we put these students groups together in 6 teams, and every team was then appointed a leader, business leader, entrepreneur, who acted as a mentor. But the whole project was over 5 weeks, and within those 5 weeks, they had to run through 5 milestones week by week and deliver, create a solution to a real-world problem that was sponsored from a startup. At the end of these 5 weeks, the teams had to present their solutions, and we also did a criteria-based formative assessment, feedback to close the learning loop, and then we went back to the participants, how it worked. And well, Kaja, before I go down any further, you were the virtual team collaboration expert in that whole project and one of the mentors, I guess, for 2 or 3 teams. Can you share your experience on that?
So what is important, like from the perspective of skills, we wanted them not only to learn about the leadership, but we wanted to teach them through experience how they should collaborate virtually. So the thing from the perspective of the mentor was not only to challenge them about the topic, about the project that they needed to conduct, but as well create the framework and show them like when to set up the rules, how to conduct effective meetings, support them, especially in those times when they had some crisis, you know, someone was not showing up. Yes, so it is like some kind of experiment that you have in the lab, but this is a business lab, and you show them how it will work in real life. What I think and remember as well from the feedback, that it's for them as well, it was a great chance to work in such a true cross-cultural environment, and for the first time with people they honestly didn't know. Because usually, even if we try to do different experiments, but within our university, this is always a trouble, that people know each other. And in real life, very often when we need to collaborate, we don't see each other, we don't know each other. So this was really something with a big impact for them as a experience.
It was actually. I think we can call it cute, right? How these different students approached each other in the teams, and some were very shy and others were quite dominant in the beginning, and then over the weeks it quite changed, and they grew together as a team, and yeah, it was beautiful to see. So that's just one example how student activity can even take place not only in one course block over the period of half a day or one day, but really extend over several weeks. Yeah, that already brings us to step number 5. If we hand over the activity to our students, if we put them in the driver's seat, obviously we need to rethink our role as well. We have to move away, step back, and change from a teacher's perspective more into the one of a coach who will just lead via questions, and also into the role of a facilitator and lifeguard sometimes as well. That's when the mud gets too high and you need to pull out an entire team just before they go really destructive on themselves. So step number 5, change your role. And step number 6, if we have these co-producing students in our experiential learning format, now we need to give them a stage, because everyone who produces a result, everyone who contributes to the course, we need to give them a stage and a say. Kaja, you have an interesting approach there. You even invite companies. Can you go a little bit deeper into that?
I'll give you the example. I have a class on innovative research techniques, like there are innovative market research techniques, and each year I invite different company that wants to create some kind of an innovation. So my students, they run the whole research in teams. They try to search for the idea of a innovative product, which is as well possible for the company to launch it. Yes, to introduce it, not with a huge cost, because always this is the element. So my role is, from one side, I provide my students with different tools. I mentor them how they should use them, but as well I'm some kind of a broker between the company and the students, because they often have questions. They want to know the details about the product, whether something could be produced or not. And in the end, we have those presentations when the company shows up. We have we have awards. Often different companies, they provide internships for the students. Last year, we really the whole group was having an internship, and they were working on a project, on a product that they designed, and they tried to implement it on the market. So from this perspective, it was really valuable for them.
Yeah, as you just gave us these insights, we had 2-3 questions coming up already. I see them, and we are going to answer these questions as well in the Q&A later on. Let me just, in order not to interrupt this 7-step process, I'm continuing. So step number 6 is visibility. Let them share their results, let them share their outcomes, and use them as building blocks in order to rearrange and put the learning object together and make it understandable as a whole, as a big picture to your classroom. And this brings us to step number 7. It's closing the gaps. It is very motivational if you take up what your students have come up with as building blocks and then just fill in the gaps, connect that knowledge in a way that it makes sense, where they can see how they contributed to the whole big picture. Now, there is one more topic where, if we look, so these were these 7 steps, starting from core structure, student engagement or student activity, code of conduct, and then the challenges, question your own role, and also give the students a stage and close the learning loop. Now the question is, very often, how do you scale this in your organization? Should you even start on your own? A lot of teachers are forced to do so right now because obviously of Corona. But when is it time to move from individual level to a more institutional approach? And maybe I can illustrate this on this slide here. You should definitely start gaining your first experience on your own within the institutional boundaries. Especially right now, there is no time right now to actually change institutional boundaries and wait for learning methods that your institution is bringing in. So you're kind of forced to step out of your comfort zone and define what is suitable at this stage for you, also for your level of expertise in teaching online, and just go one step at a time. Start now, learn fast within these boundaries. And you will probably recognize that very soon, when you share your ideas and experiences with each other within the organization, slowly but surely you will find where these boundaries actually interfere with your creativity, these institutional boundaries. What do I mean with it? For example, your institution may have regulations how you do your exams, that they have to be standardized assessments, whatever, and that doesn't really fit with the online setting because you can't really 100% fully control your students outside your classroom, these kind of questions. So that's the time when change projects in institutions will have to come in sooner or later. And what can these change projects lead to? Most of the times, programs will be adding more digital components, formative assessment, for example, that can be done over distance, where they have to transfer a certain knowledge or skill and look at their own situations rather than standardized testing. Quality assurance processes might have to be adjusted as well. New KPIs come in, roles, systems that change. Such change projects, they can easily take 1 to 1.5, even 2 years. But after that change project, the institution will start the transformation or transition into under that new set of boundaries. And the more confident the institution gets as a whole, the more the institution will come up with new programs, even new channels, and reach out for new customer segments as well, or student segments. And will take it as part of their new identity, and maybe even go as far as create or embrace the digital potential as a new value proposition or selling proposition. But definitely start now, start lean, simple, step by step, learn fast. That's the way to go. Mm-hmm. And that brings us, oh, sorry, I didn't. So that's the last step where I said redefining or taking it into your institution's DNA. That brings us to the summary, our takeaway of this webinar before we go into the Q&A. The 7 steps is start with questioning your core structure. Does it fit an online setting? Is it easy to follow? Does it create an easy to follow routine? Second, give your students more activity so that attention spans can kept high, involve them, make them co-producers. And you have to be very clear on this, what you expect from your students. There, the code of conduct comes in handy. Now you can come in with interaction with challenges. They come in many different ways. Always check if it's suitable for your setting, and question your role. Your role from a teacher more into the role of a coach and facilitator. Also question the role of your guests. Should they come in as challengers? Should they come in as just sharing their expertise? As jury members, how do you want to build in your guests? Also put them on stage, put your students on stage, and use the contribution of your students, value that contribution of your students, value the co-creation, and merge it integrate it into the big picture. And last but not least, when is the best time to start? I think there will never or I hope that there will never be a better time than to start now. Kaja, do you have anything else to add here?
Yeah, I think that like to support your last sentence, that it's you should just start straight away. I remember my experience, you know, that our university got locked down on 12th of March, and within 24 hours I was able to move online, and the next day of 13th I was already starting my classes from 8:30 to teach. So it's only, you know, you need to be prepared. Of course, not everything always will be perfect, but this is the agile approach, and you can just say your students that, you know, this is a part of the contract. We try new things. Yes, this is a field for us, and we experiment as well how we should learn. Yeah.
So I think we should go over to questions and answers. Olga, I'm actually not sure. Do you want to pick some of the questions, or how are we going to do this?
Omar, I think you can take, I really like a question from Miroslava Hurnjak here about your opinion about the gamification of educational content in online courses, and does it have a place in adult education?
Mm-hmm. So I use tools like Kahoot or other quiz style apps as well once in a while to check if I have everyone on board, and how the spread is in terms of understanding the learning objectives. I do that once in a while, and if so, then I like that gamification approach that's coming from the app. I think, to me, I rather use a gamification approach when it comes to presentations as well. And gamification is maybe the wrong word, but I like it to not to call it a presentation, for example, so that the students just are just semi-motivated, but I rather do it in a pitch style format where they have exactly, say, 4 minutes, as if you would present something in front of a group of investors, for example, where you would like in an accelerator program or so, where you're cut on time if time is over. I also like, and I think Kaja mentioned that as well, like to invite someone once in a while, and that adds to that competition level as well.
Yeah.
So that is a gamification approach in itself as well. Also, what I often do is give criteria and a rubric that other students should evaluate the presentation of the others as well, and have a clear rubric what we want to evaluate and why, and then do a feedback loop there as well. Not so much on the quality of the content, that's obviously that's my role, but on the presentation skills, for example.
Yeah. I do the same. I always because the element of doing the pitches by the students, it can be, you know, if you have like 10 of them, it can be really boring and you can lose the attention of students. But first of all, if you somehow give them space as well to ask questions, this is helpful. And the other element, my students, they always evaluate themselves. And for EMBA as well, soon we'll have final presentations. And for sure, they will have it. They will vote for themselves, and there will be as well some awards. So this is always, I always try to make it very special. This year, maybe it will be difficult to with diplomas, but we plan to send them. Yeah. So.
Olga and Kaja, I actually see one question that I think is very interesting.
Okay.
If we keep in mind that we have a lot of people in the audience coming from countries with sometimes where connectivity is a topic, bandwidth, and just the connection between, so that we can't really do synchronous online formats and rather asynchronous formats. I think these, or we've done the same kind of challenges, not only in live sessions, but also as projects over a period of time. And then rather than exchanging ideas and working together in a live session, just collaborate via a collaboration platform, anything like Microsoft Teams or Basecamp, which is super easy to use and runs on every mobile phone as well. So I think these kind of patterns that we have, or aspects that we have presented here, they actually work not only in live sessions, even more so. You need, today's students, my experience is if I give tons to read, it's usually not really that productive. People tend to overlook a lot of details, and if I demand a result to be created, look, giving a stage does not necessarily mean that we need a live presentation from students, but it could be anything like creating a short video and upload it on WhatsApp or whatever. Accompanying a paper that I hand in as a regular paper, but maybe do a short 3-minute presentation, what the key message is on a short video, or anything like that.
Like I remember the one of our first experiences when we had students from Turkey. And there were, first of all, we had difficulties with stable internet connection. Then we actually, there was the year, and exactly in the middle of the project, there was a military coup, and we lost the connection with the students at all. So what we did, we were recording a lot of materials for them. And then when we could meet, we were either chatting or having short calls, just to show that we are there and we mentor them, we challenge their results, and that they can improve.
Yeah. So any other questions there? Let's see. So any solutions about the situation of unstable internet connections? Yeah, well, that's always a bit tricky and difficult. Yes. Sometimes what I do as well, if obviously I often share the schedule for the entire day, and that is very precise, and I'm really trying to be, as much as I love improvisation in on-site sessions where I tend to observe the less active students and try to kind of integrate them, get them back again. That's more difficult in online settings, and you can compensate on that a bit if you have a very clear structure where once in a while you get to check in on them again. So two things. If someone is not really active anymore, I would really call for their names and try to activate them this way, really by calling them to step in. If internet connections are the problems, I mean, you always have to look at the majority. It cannot be that you spend most of the time dealing with an internet connection of just 1 or 2 people, and then the rest of the group, 30 people or so, are left because you're dealing with a certain problem that you can really not deal with. But what you could do, one solution is to actually give short sessions where you meet for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then let them work in offline again, and then you meet 1.5 hours later again, and you just check in on the milestones, and then you set them off again. So you reduce on that online time.
Yeah, what I think it's worth adding, that if you give them the task, it's as well valuable that you can jump from team to team to check if they need you to look up on what kind of a letter, what's their progress. And in this way, you build a closer relationship with within a team. Yeah, so they don't become, they are not so anonymous as a, you know, a group of, I don't know, 60 students.
I like the question about ways to have fun during online classes to keep attention of students. I would ask you to be very brief, actually. If you could just say 2 best activities that work for you to keep the attention of students and to keep it fun. And then we have a couple of related questions actually on some resources and links in terms of student engagement and research sprints. So I will ask you both, you know, after the webinar, if you could just share also some of the resources, maybe programs, tools that you use and that you find helpful, that we can share with everyone later on. Yeah, sure. But now if you can tell us 2 things that work for you best to keep it fun and engaging.
Kaja, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. Like, to one thing which really makes people to laugh and be really engaged is that when we use different videos. And sometimes when I give the concept, it's not only that I'm showing the videos, but I ask them to show the videos. So sometimes it's really great because you can, even yourself, everyone is so entertained, and they think how they can contribute to the class to even make it more interesting. Omar?
I think one thing that I would like to add is fun tends to come if you're more relaxed, and in order to have a relaxed atmosphere, and I'm relaxed as in feeling comfortable, I think trust is very, very important. And so if I collaborate with students, I want them to look at me as if we would work in a business setting, in a business team as colleagues. Obviously, we do have different roles, and there will be a qualification process at some stage. This is all clear. But I want to work them at the same level, and then they tend to open up after at least half a day. Then and then in a more relaxed atmosphere, there are you can deal with jokes a little bit better. You can sometimes you don't have to be that serious, and I think that's very important in an online setting. Yeah.
Wonderful. We have 2 minutes left. So any final word of advice before we end the webinar?
Maybe the thing, because a lot of you ask about different tools and different, you know, how they can be incorporated. Of course, we'll share them with Omar later on, but I think that more important than actually thinking what tools we should use, it's like better to think how I should start thinking about restructuring my whole class to make it really this free third time for students' activities, and us only 1/4, which can be difficult because we are used to be very talkative people as teachers.
Great. I have a final poll just to ask our participants before we leave, and Vlado will launch it now. So thank you so much, Omar and Kaja, you know, for everyone. We would be happy to hear from you if it was useful, first of all. And of course, if you would like to learn more about different digital tools, because we can prepare also a longer program for you with Omar and Kaja, and also with Nikos Milonopoulos, whom we had a webinar with in March. So I think it's a good opportunity to build on the expertise within the network and to exchange experiences and learn more together. So thank you so much, Omar and Kaja, for being with us today. Thank you, Danica, for joining us. Please say a couple of words.
It's me who would like to thank everybody, and I'm proud of our alumni, fellows alumni. This is great, and looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you very, very much, and thank you, Olga, and all participants.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.